Now, it is my honor to introduce our commencement speaker, Mr. Richard J. Harshman, Chairman, President, Chief Executive Officer of Allegheny Technologies Inc., who is also a member of the Robert Morris University Board of Trustees, currently Vice Chair of the Board, and a proud alum of Robert Morris University, class of 1978. Rich Harshman joined Teledyne Incorporated as a corporate internal auditor in 1978. He served in increasingly important roles at Teledyne, which became part of Allegheny Technologies in 1996 at both the corporate and operating levels, including controller of Teledyne's Aerospace and Electronics segment, Director of Financial Operations, Director and later Vice President of Business Ethics and Compliance. In 1995, he was appointed Senior Vice President, Finance and Administration at AUVAC. In July 1998, Rich moved to Allegheny Technologies corporate headquarters in Pittsburgh as Vice President, Investor Relations and Corporate Communications. He became Allegheny Technologies Vice President, Controller, and Acting CFO in 2000, and was elected Vice President, Finance and Chief Financial Officer. In 2001, he was elected Senior Vice President, and in 2003, Rich was named Executive Vice President, Finance and Chief Financial Officer, and was given accountability for Allegheny Technologies procurement and information technology shared services. In 2010, Rich was named President and Chief Operating Officer, and just this past week, our timing's perfect, he is named Chairman and President and Chief Executive Officer of Allegheny Technologies. Rich's wife, Cheryl, is with us here today. Together, they reside in Upper St. Clair, Pennsylvania, and have 3 children, Dirk, Jeffrey, and Jamie, and a granddaughter, Lisa. Cheryl is sitting over here to our left in our special section. Cheryl, please stand so you can be recognized. Please join me in welcoming and congratulating Mr. Richard J. Harshman.
Thank you, President Delamo. Regardless of the weather, this is a beautiful day. It's a day of celebration for all of us, but especially for you, the graduate candidates and your families and friends. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, congratulations. You made it. Mom and Dad, they made it. But you know, in reality, your journey isn't ending, it's really just beginning. And today it's a tremendous honor for me to be here celebrating this day with you. When President Delamo asked me a few months ago to be this year's undergraduate commencement speaker, my first words were, "Are you sure?" My thoughts then began racing to what will I say? I've been to numerous graduation ceremonies, obviously my own when I graduated from Robert Morris, but that was 33 years ago, almost to the date. And believe it or not, my memory of that day is a little cloudy. I've also attended a number of ceremonies here at RMU as a member of the Board of Trustees. And most recently, my daughter graduated last spring. So I began to do some research and I found a couple of interesting quotes. Robert Orban, a comedy writer, said, quote, "A graduation ceremony is an event where the commencement speaker tells thousands of students dressed in identical caps and gowns that individuality is the key to success." End quote. Gary Trudeau, who is the creator of the Doonesbury comic strip, said, quote, "Commencement speeches were invented largely in the belief that outgoing college students should never be released into the world until they have been properly sedated." I'll try my best not to sedate you today, but I make no promises. Finding little help on the internet, I decided to follow the best approach, which is really always the best approach, and write the speech from my heart. I graduated from Robert Morris University, then it was Robert Morris College, on May 14th, 1978. Much has changed at RMU and in the world over those 33 years. And much has changed with me, including adding about 40 pounds and losing a lot of hair. Robert Morris, or RMU, is now a university. As I said when I graduated, it was Robert Morris College, or RMC. Where you sit today, there were woods. this building didn't exist. In fact, at that time, the newest building on the campus in 1978 was the library, believe it or not, which was only a couple of years old then. There was no Nicholson Center, no new dorms, no Joe Walton Stadium. And okay, I know we still have some of the same dorms, but we're working on that. The campus today is beautiful, a wonderful combination of academic learning and student living. As we move forward into the future, the campus will continue to evolve, to grow, to improve. Why? Because it must. Change is necessary because the status quo is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to our current students, it's unacceptable to our future students, and to the RMU administration, faculty, and board of trustees. From an academic standpoint, when I graduated in 1978, RMU had 10 bachelor and 5 associate degrees, and a graduating class of some 400 bachelor degree candidates, almost all of whom were accounting majors like me. Today, RMU offers 50 diverse undergraduate programs, and today's graduating class numbers 800. So you see, today RMU is a much broader, more academically diversified institution of higher education. Why? Because to remain vibrant, relevant, it had to change. It had to grow, move forward, it had to grow. If the leaders of RMU accepted the status quo of 1978, RMU may not exist today. And if it did, it certainly would be much less successful. From a student body perspective, in 1978, minorities were few, and a program to bring students from foreign countries was only a vision for the future. Today, RMU has over 400 minority undergraduates and 165 students representing 40 different countries. Today's graduating class is represented by 23 different countries. Quite a dramatic change. And President Delamo and his administration and the Board of Trustees are committed to continuing to enhance the diversity of RMU. Why? Because once again, to remain vibrant, relevant, and to be successful in the future, status quo is unacceptable. From an economic perspective, in 1978, the GDP of the United States was $2.3 trillion. In 2010, the US GDP was $14.5 trillion. Why is this growth important? For the US to remain a global leader in anything, our economy must grow. It must remain vibrant. It must create jobs to employ our people and to provide opportunities for college graduates like you. If we as a nation accept the status quo, it won't take very long for the US to become a second-rate nation. So we cannot accept the status quo. Why do I keep saying this? Let me give you an example of what global competition means from an economic standpoint. In 1978, China's GDP was $60 billion at today's currency exchange rate. In 2010, China's GDP was approximately $6 trillion, 100 times the 1978 GDP. And the Chinese economy is projected to grow by at least 8% annually for the foreseeable future. Most economists believe the Chinese economy will be larger than the US economy at some point within the next 20 years or less. This competition is real, and it will impact your future, my children's future, and my company's future if we don't continue to maintain financial strength, have a global market perspective, invest in technology and capabilities, invest in the education of our nation's youth, be committed to having a diversified economy that recognizes the importance of manufacturing, the backbone of any healthy economy. In other words, we must be committed to a vibrant, diversified, growing economy. We cannot accept the status quo if we are to remain a leading nation in the world. So you see, change is going to happen, whether initiated by us or not. If we firmly believe that the status quo is unacceptable, if we embrace the importance and significance of growth, of self-improvement, of positive change, it can become our strength. Positive change is an opportunity for personal growth, for the growth of an academic institution such as RMU, or for a global specialty metals producer such as Allegheny Technologies. Positive change can become the launch pad for success and growth. President Delamo asked me to share a little of my personal story with you. I didn't ask him why, but I think I know. You see, 33 years ago, I was one of you, sitting in my commencement with my fellow students, waiting for my name to be called to walk up on the stage at John Jay Center and receive my diploma. My parents and family were in attendance, brimming with pride, just as parents, family, and friends are here today with you. For me, a great source of this family pride was because I was the first from my family to attend college. My parents didn't graduate from high school. They had to quit school to get a job to help support their families. This was not unusual during the 1930s and 1940s. Education was a luxury they and their families could not afford. My father received his high school equivalency from the U.S. Navy, voluntarily enlisting the day after the attack on Pearl Harbor. After serving our country for a little more than 4 years, he returned, met and married my mom, had 4 children, and worked in a warehouse for 35 years. My mother was a homemaker and stay-at-home mom, taking care of my sisters, my elderly grandfather, and me. My parents couldn't afford to help me pay for tuition at Robert Morris for my freshman year. And since money was limited, I was a commuter student to the Moon campus. From my sophomore through senior years, I had to continue to commute since funds for room and board just weren't there. And I had to switch to the downtown Pittsburgh Center for my last 3 years since my beat-up 1970 Plymouth Duster could not make the daily, they don't even make that anymore, could not make the daily trip to the Moon campus. The sources for my tuition payments were working as a laborer at a carbon plant on Neville Island here in Pittsburgh, which still exists, where I became a member of the United Steelworkers, and from RMU academic scholarships and student loans. And I also worked some small jobs during the school year to have a little bit of fun. Academically, I was at the top of my class throughout my 4 years at RMU. In late summer, just before the start of my senior year, I received a letter from RMU stating that my academic scholarship was being reduced by $1,000. Now, in 1977, $1,000 was a huge amount of money, especially to me. It might well have been $1 million. I had no idea where and how I was going to find $1,000 at such a late date. I didn't have any way to make up for the shortage. The loans were in place, and they were at the maximum. My summer job was over, and all the money I'd made, after taxes of course, was in the bank ready to pay for tuition, fees, and books. I was pretty upset, and given my academic accomplishments, didn't understand why the scholarship was being reduced. So I called the student aid office and told them my story. I asked why the scholarship was reduced given my outstanding grades. The reply was that the aid money was very tight this year. I said there was no way for me to make up the difference at this late date, and I pleaded and pointed out they had worked hard for 3 years, had an outstanding academic record, and was 1 year away from graduating. Was there anything that RMU could do? Well, the plea must have struck the right chord, because the student aid officer said he'd see what he could do and get back to me in a few days. A couple of days later, he called. He said that my academic scholarship was being increased by $1,000. Now, RMU didn't have to do this. They could have said, sorry, there's no more aid available, but they didn't. And to a large degree, that's why I'm here today. Had that $1,000 not been available, or not made available, I most likely wouldn't have been able to complete my senior year, at least not on time. And I certainly wouldn't have graduated in May of 1978. And if I hadn't graduated in May of 1978, I wouldn't have received a job offer from Teledyne upon graduation. And if you think about all the dominoes in the journey of your life and your career that start to fall, had that first domino not happened, I most likely would not be standing here today as chairman and CEO of Allegheny Technologies. So you see, I really believe my life was changed forever with this one decision by RMU to increase my scholarship by $1,000. And that was even before we had the marketing campaign. So when I'm asked, why are you giving Robert Morris University a $1 million gift? It's because I know how important a scholarship can be to an RMU student. It's because I believe in RMU. I believe in its mission, in its people, its leader, Dr. Delamo, and his administration. I believe in RMU's professors and associate professors who prepared me very well and continue to prepare RMU students to compete in a very competitive world. But most importantly, I believe in you, the 2011 graduating class of RMU and the future graduating classes of RMU. Regardless of your chosen field, you have been well prepared for success during your years at RMU. I'm a perfect example of this. 33 years ago, I wasn't any different than any one of you sitting in the audience today. When I began my career with Teledyne, it was a Fortune 100 company. It recruited for its internal audit department at such universities as UCLA, the University of California, Berkeley, the University of Indiana, the University of Illinois. It did not recruit at Robert Morris. New hires from each of these prestigious universities were in my recruiting class at Teledyne, largely through the efforts of the job placement office here, where it gave me a list, and I sent a resume to one of the Teledyne operations, and it ended up at their corporate headquarters in Los Angeles. So I was given the job offer, I accepted, and joined this recruiting class of about 5 other recent graduates from these other large institutions. I was the only one from Robert Morris, obviously. And no one even heard of Robert Morris, quite frankly, at Teledyne or in that recruiting class. And yet I soon realized, and so did the management of Teledyne, that the other first-year auditors were no better prepared or capable than I was, this graduate from Robert Morris College. So RMU had prepared me well, and I could compete against anyone. And guess what? Teledyne then began recruiting at Robert Morris. And today, ATI continues to recruit at Robert Morris. So you see, if I can become the chairman and CEO of a company approaching $5 billion a year in annual revenues, with nearly 12,000 employees in over 75 locations worldwide, so can you. As you complete your RMU journey today and you embark on the next leg of your journey, I hope that you remember with great fondness your days at RMU. You have been given a foundation for success. Use it wisely. Embrace positive change. Change is going to happen, whether you like it or not. Do not accept the status quo. Recognize that without challenges, there are no opportunities. Without risks, there are no rewards. Continue to grow, both as a person and in your chosen field. Keep learning. The day you stop learning is the day you should find something else to do. Be involved in your community in any way that you can, either through volunteering or through financial support. There are many people less fortunate who need our help, especially in these challenging economic times. Always remember that your success breeds further success for Robert Morris University. The more successful our alums are, we have a richer, it gives us a richer tradition and reputation of Robert Morris is enhanced. You can continue to benefit from the future success of RMU as the value of your degree is enhanced in stature and recognition. And please remain actively involved in, engaged with, connected to, and supportive of your Robert Morris University. We need you. We know that you will represent our university well, and you will help us to continue to grow RMU so that we can change many more lives forever. Finally, during my research, I found another interesting quote. The author is unknown, but I think it's wise and good advice. The quote is, "All that stands between the graduate and the top of the ladder is the ladder. Go find your ladder." Thank you, congratulations, and go RMU.